Howdy everyone out there in Twitch TV land. I am Mokog and I have my best friend here, Function. Say howdy, Function.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we're bringing you the General's Tent. This is a Hex TCG podcast, or vidcast, unless you...
Webcast.
Yeah, webcast, that's a great one. Dedicated to, well, Hex Shards of Fate, maybe a little bit of deck building, a little bit of commentary, gossip if necessary, but just all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, good time.
So, for those who have been paying attention to us, which y'all are like the most awesome people in the world if you have been, we have been off the past several weeks because, well, there's this little thing in the US called Christmas.
Anyways, so there's this General's Tent thing that we do.
Yes. So we've got a bunch of cool things I think planned between the both of us for 2014. Oh my god, 2014. And one of which is continuing on the General's Tent because I had a lot of fun last year doing it, and I figured I might, talk Function into doing it for another year, or at least until we get bored of each other.
At least keep the ball rolling for a little bit longer. Hopefully at least somebody tunes in and can tolerate us blathering on for a little bit.
Oh my goodness. You know what? Maybe it's just the day we do it, because on Saturday I decided to jump on and stream. I'm like, you know what? It's 1 p.m. in my time zone. I've got nothing going on. Let's jump on, maybe work with some decks, check out some new cards, play with the patch, because they, brought in a bunch of cool stuff. And I'm like, I have 10 concurrent viewers. This feels so nice. It was 2 digits.
Wow. Yeah, no, I've streamed a time or two here and there and managed to have a decent number of viewers, but I haven't really been able to lately. Like in the last 2 weeks, I don't think I've been able to stream or do anything at all. I've just been pretty much laying in bed, not doing much, or been being festive.
And then you could have gotten away with it, but that's okay. Your fan base will forgive you, because we still have YouTube.
Yeah. Well, and a bunch of old YouTube videos. Maybe that's what I need to be doing for 2014, is actually get my act together and start doing stuff again. Although, okay, so we were talking for plans. Do you have any other interesting stuff you got planned for 2014?
Yes, actually. So one of the first things I did, and I know you know this, but one of the first things was I really tried to take a look at the economic side of Hex. And now that we have more of the cards, we're near almost a good chunk of the cards. I think about almost 300 of them have been revealed so far. And we've talked about this a little bit before outside of the General's Tent, but I wanted to see if I could try to figure out what kind of the chase cards were going to be. And that's coming right back around. I've not been idle on that. I've been observing and taking notes and trying to collect data and try to do some analysis on it. But there's only so much you can do, and the problems that come across is not everything's announced yet, and you can't get accurate with as much hearsay as there is. So
yeah, that and like a lot of the implementation is still yet to change. Like, we're still missing a couple gems or a couple other odds and ends like that.
And so those can affect some variations between. And one of the things I took to heart, especially with some of the advice from you on that, in any case, what that's going to turn into is I'm going to be taking a very hard look at what will turn a chase card into something valuable in Hex, because Hex isn't just like Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering deals essentially with numismatic value, so whether something's an extended art, an alternate art, or foil, it's card value, so the inherent value and then rarity. So, and rarity is not just the card rarity itself within the pack, but the rarity of the set in conjunction to the other sets in the system. And that's what standard valuation is based on. Well, there's another deeper layer to this, and I won't watch the video. So the other aspects of that is Hex has a different system everything.
Yeah, I want to know
Everything.
about the crafting system. Like, things like that. But I think another one, what you were saying is it seems like a lot more of the card value is going to be tied directly into what was I saying? Tied directly into power level rather than really like the cosmetic value of, since it's going to be unlockable anyways at some point. Although, so here's an interesting one: is if you're able to trade, like once I foil and full art a card, if I'm able to trade that one away in its current state, so when you receive it, it's gonna still be full art and everything. There's gonna be, like, I guess what I would say is a lot of the very powerful cards that are getting played very often, those ones are going to be very commonly seen in their fully unlocked state because so many people are playing them.
Correct.
That the cards that people aren't playing that much are going to be actually the ones that are rarer in the form of the unlocked art.
Yes.
Like the bad
that
cards
is also a
are actually
possibility.
harder to unlock the art in. That's kind of an interesting thought that I hadn't really thought of until just now.
Yes. So there's a lot of layers to that. That's one layer to it. Here's another fun one for you. So what you may end up seeing for chase cards is what is more valuable is an unplayed, recently opened, drop from a draft epic rare, so that professional players will have a fresh card to bring into a tournament to load its stats up on.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking about that too, is being able to put that like tournament win tag on it and stuff, where if you're able to get more tags onto the card on a fresh one, it might become more valuable for at least like kind of fresh trading value, I guess is maybe what I would say.
And another part is we're going to have a lot of different switchings, and there's going to be a lot of different types of liquidity. The aspects of that are going to be very profound in how the market interprets value. So there's a lot of intricacies, and there's about 4 big broad components if they implement everything that they say they're going to. So it's going to be at least one Hexonomics video on that. It's kind of a cumulative sort of work on there, because the interpreting card power ends up actually being the easiest but the stickiest side of it. Numismatic, you can assign some values to, and you can see those play out. But overall value is just going to be interesting.
What was I going to say? So I wonder if, like, well, okay, what I was going to say is unlocking like the double backs on cards and kind of the extended art and stuff. I would imagine that not all cards are going to unlock at the same pace, so it'll be interesting to see like what the ones that are really hard to unlock are. That'll definitely be interesting. As far as power level goes, one thing to keep in mind as far as like figuring out what chase cards are and stuff, for set 1, a lot of the cards are going to be so low value because there's going to be so many packs getting opened at the very beginning, and so many people playing are going to be Kickstarter backers that open packs, that a lot of the people who are going to join in after the fact, like I'm talking about the people that aren't backers, probably aren't going to be joining maybe till set 2 or something. So that initial set, what you're looking for is, at least for value cards, are ones that are going to maintain their value over time, like that they might not even be the best card now, but they're going to still be pretty good later on kind of cards.
Yes.
Cards that become staples in a sense.
Most definitely. So, and to play on that, because that is absolutely true, and that's one of the things that will definitely be touched on, is how the evolving metagame is going to affect the chase card. But one of the things that affect the desire for purchase, it is, I'm sure you've noticed it in deck building already. When you have 4 copies of a card, you have a real playset. And if you're like me, you like to keep concurrent decks. We don't just have one deck. There was a time I had 15 decks going on, and like 3 of them were running counter magics, and I was running 4 counter magic in each deck. In a physical TCG, to have 3 concurrent decks with counter magic, I would need 12 copies of it. What we're going to see is a muting of certain values of staple cards, and you're going to see more cycling. So what that's going to do is it's still going to push down certain types of pricing, and it actually, for desired cards, when the market is relatively stable, they're going to push towards a mean value.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You won't see as much spikiness until you start getting waves upon waves. And so you'll see the wave changes that occur in a standard rotating block format, and that'll just be the standard market shifts when it goes forward.
Well, the real spikiness too is going to be from breakout cards, where maybe it's a card that was a rare and everybody disregarded it as a card that wasn't really getting played, and then all of a sudden it becomes very, very good, and maybe not a lot of people owned it because they were selling them all while they were drafting, and somebody was hoarding hundreds of them knowing that they were going to be worth something at some point.
Don't you be giving away my plans.
Yeah, I mean, I can guess 1 or 2 cards that are going to currently hold very little value early on, but will grow in value very quickly at some point.
And you know what? Maybe we'll eventually release this wonderful economic or hexonomic tip on the General's Tent one time. Maybe early on, when we only have 1 concurrent viewer that's not you or I on the stream simultaneously, maybe we'll let them know which one it is, and then suddenly they got the greatest inside market tip ever.
It's Infernal Professor. The one person listening to us is the card might not be crazy bonkers right now. It's actually decent. It's not amazing all the time, and not every deck wants it. But at some point, it's going to be the card you need to include in every single one of your like classic decks, where every set is enabled. Like come set 15, Infernal Professor is going to be one of the most sought after cards. If somebody 15 years from now or whenever set 15 comes out wants to hold me to that and I'm wrong, I'll accept that. If you buy your 100 Infernal Professors for like 10 cents in set 1, I'll buy them back from you. No Rager 49 is the person listening. I will buy your 100 Infernal Professors back from you 10 years from now if they're not worth anything.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Because your Infernal Professor is lovely as a card.
It's a really good card.
Put a random non-resource card from your deck into your hand. It's a tutor, and tutors are very good in this game.
No, it's not a tutor because you're not getting to pick which card it is. You have no control over it.
Well, you don't have any. Ideally, everything in your deck is you want it to be helpful to you in as many situations as possible. And I've actually come across that. Yeah. You don't get as grand a filter, but for not having a direct filter or direct choice in it, it gets -2 cost.
Yeah, it gets -2 cost, and the cost of Infernal Professor is 2. So it's basically a filter that costs 0, but the cost is actually in the life loss is where the real cost is. So
yeah, it's still a lovely looking, a lovely card, especially if you can start cycling your actions, because he doesn't void himself. So the instant you start getting a good action cycle. Oh goodness, that could get really wonderfully rough very quickly.
Yeah,
actually,
because
because
stuff you can do with it.
If you had an Infernal Professor that procced an Infernal Professor, then procced another card, then you end up getting it for. Actually, I guess that's about the same.
You get it for the same -2, but at least you'd cycle 2 cards out of your deck. That's the benefit. So.
Oh, fun stuff.
That's
that's
a
one.
Good card.
That's one thing in the pipeline is hexonomic stuff. So that's one thing going on. Since we jumped on a wonderful tangent there.
Oh yeah, we totally did tangent, didn't we?
Yeah. Oh yeah, total tangent. But so do you have anything in the pipeline yourself though?
I have a podcast on the way, but it's not quite ready yet.
A podcast? Do you have any tantalizing details?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say yet because I don't want to spoil anything. But I do have a podcast on the way, and it'll probably be ready in the next. I don't know. I want to say it'll be ready by the 15th, but I don't want to jinx myself yet. It'll be ready by the end of the month.
Awesome. Well, now see, then I'm going to have the Threshold podcast to listen to. Then I'm going to have Functions podcast to listen to. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun stuff. I'm looking forward to it. We've already recorded most of it. We just got to go back and record a segment or two, so it'll be cool.
Very good. The let's see. Well, then I think on that bit we can probably take a look at some of the new stuff that came out in the patch. Then,
Yeah.
because I mean we had some. They released at least 10 new cards in the patch, from when they decide that they want to finally load up here. And I gotta say I really like the cards they added in this patch, because I am falling in love with all the incantations.
Yeah, the incantations are really cool. Like, I like that they encourage people to kind of try out building different decks, and those are actually really good cards for them to make as far as like casual players go, because a lot of casual players will just build their one deck that they're really in love with, but sometimes a player will see one of these cards and they just they want to think of how they can make it work, and I guess it encourages new players who aren't very good at deck building or don't have a lot of confidence in deck building to kind of, start trying to build new things and try out new strategies and realize what works and what doesn't. Cards like these, they're build arounds in a sense. And so it's really good for players in that sense.
I'll tell you what though, this past Saturday on my stream, I was, just trying to work with the incantations separately, work with them in a mono sense, and then move on into doing the dual color style. And something I found that works really well together have been Incantation of Righteousness as well as Incantation of Savagery. And it's really interesting because already Diamond and Wild work really well when you try to take on that healing aspect.
Yeah, I've been toying around with that a little bit too.
And so, because playing your diamond creatures is going to proc your Incantation of Savagery, and those diamond creatures, in addition to that, when you do some of the simple combos that exist in Diamond that do life gain, it's just really stable, more so than it seems like it should be.
Yeah, there's some strong stuff you can do.
And on top of all of that, on top of that stability, if it wasn't for one of the bugs on the incantation or Diamond's incantation, I would probably be rocking this deck really hardcore right now. Have you come across the Diamond bug yet?
The bug? No, I haven't actually tried playing with that one, and I haven't been paired up against it yet, so I don't actually know what the bug is.
Oh, it's a wicked bug. So what ends up happening is that once you actually proc the Incantation of Righteousness, if you are at 20 or more life, the card gives you a +2/+2 to every other creature you have on the field. That works really well with a Shinhair creature deck. But what ends up happening is that every copy of Incantation of Righteousness, as it transforms, whether it's in the deck or in the field, gives a +2/+2 to all other creatures. So when it procs, you give +8/+8 to everything but the but the incantations.
Wow,
so it goes
definitely pretty broken.
It's like, oh, and because I was able to proc them turn 4, and so at the end of turn 4 it was I believe I had played 2 Runts of the Litter as well as an Adamantian Scrivener and a Righteous Paladin. No, it was Scrivener, Paladin, Runts of the Litter, and then summon a Runt with a Monkishin. And
that seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, so, Scrivener comes down, Incantation procs, Righteous Paladin comes down, Incantation procs, Runts of the Litter come down, Incantations proc twice with the Scrivener in play, summon Monkishin, both of the Incantations transform, turn into their guys, and then everything got +8/+8. It was very mean. It was beautiful. It was beautiful, but it was mean.
Yeah, I actually so there's another bug with the gems that they don't actually have they're supposed to require a threshold. So if you're playing a blood gem and a diamond card, you're supposed to need to have blood resources to use it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have no blood shards in your deck, if you don't have the threshold, it'll still trigger the gem regardless, and the gem will still work. And yeah, I do play like a lot of wacky like 2 or 3 color decks, or ones that
Mm-hmm.
are not even playing the third color, but you're splashing just one shard and a couple shards of fate to get that third color,
Yep.
just to activate a gem. And there's a couple gems. So I guess what I'm getting at is it does suck because you play some of these guys, you wish you could play them without triggering the gem, but that's not always possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there are a couple of these gems where, since it's an activated ability and it targets something, you can actually escape out of it, and you can still kind of cheat the bug so that you're not actually cheating your opponent, and you can escape out and it'll work as intended.
Well, that is, of course, unless they decide to drop in a prime wild orb of dominance on a something that's just got a minor shard in it. Like, oh,
Yeah, that too.
here comes some rhinos.
I've seen a couple of people that are just intentionally doing that, and it's just kind of annoying. But I mean, in that case, you just don't play against that person next time.
Well, and the other part is, ideally, you want to have a deck strong enough that even if some shenanigans go on because the client's not finished yet, you should be able to push through.
Well, what I'm saying here is like people who are purposely like they know there's a bug and they're like they're purposely exploiting it. Like,
Oh, I
it
understand.
happens a ton on accident. I've played against a bunch of people who are like, oh, I didn't understand it worked that way. And I've played against a couple of people who are like, oh yeah, no, I know this is bugged, but I don't really care. I was like, oh, well, that's not nice.
Yeah, there's a couple things. There's two reasons to do that. They're not fantastically awesome reasons, but not every reason needs to be fantastically awesome. So, one of the reasons that you'd want to do that is you want there to be a consistent push so that whenever they're looking at reporting and server output, that it shows
Yeah.
that this error has occurred. Uh, Granted, you're kind of being a pain in the ass in the process to the opponent, but it's showing consistently that if they've tried to put in a fix, that it hasn't worked yet. But granted, we don't know all of Cryptozoic's bug fixing procedures, so I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how they handle those.
I really wish we did. I wish that like they at least let us under the hood a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like what their bug squashing procedures are, because I really I would like to know that their bug forums are actually useful. Because like the bug reporting thing, I was really active in it early on, and then it just
Mm-hmm.
got flooded with duplicate posts where it'd be like the second page of the bug report would literally be all the same bug or almost that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
exaggerating a little bit, but there would be so many duplicate posts that it was really hard to sift through and help sort it for people. Um, like I wish there was a little bit more moderation on the bug report forums, that they were merging those posts, and I just wish I knew that that time spent was worthwhile, and I would probably jump back on board and try to find all kinds of bugs, because I was finding bugs like maybe a bug every 15 minutes and for every hour, like for hours and hours and hours
Mm-hmm.
when the first days of alpha.
Yeah, I mean, there's now the bright spot is that we can tell they're squashing them along the way. I've noticed a lot fewer of them, but some of them are also pronounced, like +8, +8. Um, but I think that one was found by like everyone and their mother pretty easily,
Yeah.
though. It's really hard to miss that. But there's a lot of things that I think could always be touched on. Like, for instance, I really want to try to get Ritualist of the Spring Litter to work, but she's. I just can't make her work. I've tried. I'm like, this seems like this card should be awesome, but it just is never in play at the right time.
Yeah, I mean that's you're talking about like the one that makes duplicate shin hair. Yeah. So
Yep.
actually, there's another cool element to this card, but yeah. So the thing with this and with the incantation of savagery, like the one that's really
Mhm.
strong that puts the 6/6 spell shield guy into play is,
Yep.
when they're good, they're great. They're really really good. But then usually they're pretty terrible top decks.
Mhm.
And while ritualist isn't always a terrible top deck, but most of the time it is. And like they have a high variance in power levels. Sometimes they're absolutely great, and sometimes they're absolutely worthless. An interesting one with Ritualist, and I haven't actually tried it yet, but it should work with Mimic, the blue spell that clones a copy of one of your cards. If you clone a Shinhair with it, it should give you a second one of that, and kind of works interesting with Ritualist.
That might be pretty fun. So you create a copy of a target troop and you put that into play.
It has to, but I mean, the target troop has to be a Shinhair for it to work.
So if you targeted any of the Shinhair, so it'd be one of your cards or effects that would create one or more Shinhair, create that many +1 instead. So yeah.
So I mean,
I think
so
the unique stuff might make a problem with that because, well, you're making a copy of a. If you made a copy of a unique on your side, that might be an issue. Like if you copy their Grand Concubunny from their side onto your side while you have a Ritualist in play, only one of those is going to be able to stay.
Yeah, so in that point, the Mimic isn't, or the Ritualist isn't really doing much for you. But and I guess that it's a little bit like kind of win more, I guess, because at that point, if you're going all the effort to get the double blue that I think you need for Mimic, that you're not getting a whole lot of value out of it. But it's something to keep in mind for later on. If there's a card that you want to, that is really, really good if you copy it and get a second one into play for free, there could be an interesting little combo there, especially if they both had activated abilities so that like you untap something or get a little value. It'd be pretty nice.
You know, and the thing that I found with the Ritualist is, and I guess I'm partially rehashing what you said. I'm going to try to do it in a slightly special way. When it's in play and your effects can be layered on it, you're getting the value as intended on it. But by itself, as a 1/1, it's not as good as it could be. You would rather have another 1/1 Shinhair that did something a little bit more spiffy, because
you'd rather have a sensei or something.
Yes, you know, a sensei could have been another card. So that combo aspect of it, I think, puts it into the casual or thematic deck, or most likely into PvE for that card. But when I compare that to an effect like the Incantation of Savagery, on the other hand, the Incantation of Savagery is sacrificing 1 or 4 deck slots to benefit from what your deck should do naturally. And that's one of the things I like about Savagery and Righteousness, or those two incantations, because the Scrivener and the Righteous Paladin is a powerful combo in and of itself, and Incantation of Righteousness passively benefits from that and puts in a fantastic card for its slot.
Yeah.
Savagery does the same thing. You're always wanting to play creatures, at least in a Wild Shinhair style deck, that creates you advantage. Well, what this is doing is it's going, put a constant in play, and in this metagame, there's very little constant removal. Benefit from it, and then bring in a 6/6 spell shield creature that can attack the turn it comes in, which I don't know if that's supposed to be yet, but at the moment it's acting like they all have haste.
It should be intentional. I don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't be able to attack the turn they transform, because think about it like this, like Hop Hero, like that samurai guy, when he transforms into his next state, he's able to attack the turn he swaps, like, and just because he started out as a constant or started out as a troop, why should Summoning Sickness apply to him any different? He's already been in play for more than a turn.
Unless, of course, you bring in a Hop Hero with a whole bunch of Shinhair to sacrifice and then transform him the turn he comes in and then swing with him. But that's a different story.
It doesn't work like that, and yeah, that is a different story. What was I going to say, though? I don't quite remember. Yeah, it's all good. Now I was going to say Dream Dance. That was a card that was added kind of recently. I wish, and actually it's almost there on your screen, like right on the right. But
looking for my Dream Dance.
But I think I'm a little bit delayed from seniors. Right. But yeah, Dream Dance, it got changed a little bit, and I wish it was its old state, or at least it's kind of resembled it, because now it just kind of cycles through some cards. It doesn't really actually draw you any.
Let's see. Let's find.
It's down 1, right below Uranus. Oh, no, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I've
not
done
very
I've
delayed.
done
Yeah,
reset it. Yeah, sorry, I've reset all of that. Dream Dance, I'm sure I'll find it.
it's probably that card right. No, it's one more up, maybe. No, I have no idea. There, it's right next
I
to the caterpillar.
It's next to the caterpillar. Oh, there it is. Okay, Spirit Dance. No, that's Spirit Dance, not Dream Dance.
Yeah,
That
dream
was
dance,
not
right next
the.
to the caterpillar.
I
The
was
blue
thinking
one.
it was Wild. That's why.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so because beforehand, Dream Dance reduced the cost of every other action you played in the turn by one. And so one of the things, like when we were doing one of our early contests, people would Dream Dance, Dream Dance, Dream Dance, and reduce the cost of all their spells. So now it's troops in your deck get permanent when this card enters play, draw a card, and then choose and discard a card. Yeah, no.
So, I mean, it could
um,
still be a combo piece. I mean, that well, the only reason you would ever play this card is if it was a combo piece. Um, and it still has potential to be one, but its potential just diminished by so much. Like, I wish I would I wish it either maybe like retain the same cost and just didn't say discard a card. It said when this troop enters play, you just draw one. That'd be kind of cool. If it was like a whatever the main card from Elves is that I Glimpse of Nature from Magic.
mm-hmm,
I played a lot of Legacy Elves, and Glimpse is obviously like the main card in the deck
mm-hmm.
that makes the deck work. Where it's every time you play a creature, you just draw a card and you play your whole deck out on turn one and win the game. um, but so I mean, this is almost like Glimpse, except Glimpse only costs one resource, and but
the
the fact that you have to discard is kind of sucks.
Yeah, the thought that comes to me on this is that when you combine the Dream Dance with the Spirit Dance, that you end up getting that cycling value that's kind of worth pulling through and being able to play the cards and then draw, to play the cards and then draw quickly. Um,
Yeah, it
I
works
can
well
see
with
it
like
maybe.
Sensei, where the
Mm-hmm,
troop you play draws you a card as well, so you're able to draw two, discard one, and that way you can kind of keep the chain going rather
mm-hmm,
than draw, discard, and then you're not actually up a card. Um, with this though, with the two combined, if there was some kind of recurable way to get creatures back to from your graveyard to your hand or graveyard to play, it would
mm-hmm.
work pretty well because you'd be able to toss stuff in your graveyard pretty quickly, and then get it back and recur that effect of troops coming into play and you discarding stuff.
Yeah, we don't have a well reliable way to do that as of yet. Dream Dance I can see comboing really well with the one for one uh, guy or dude who produces all the flyers. So the Ancestors Chosen. So the
Yeah, it would
spirits
work
that
pretty
come
well there.
off of that is exactly essentially their mini senseis with flying.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's exactly what I was talking about. So yeah, the ancestors chosen in Dream Dance would work pretty well together.
So, and I get that because really, whenever you play one of the spirits, you love the 2/2 flyer, you love drawing a card, but you always want to chain your spirits. You want, like, Ancestors Chosen to be sitting there. You haven't drawn one for like 6 turns. You've got 12. It's at least half your deck remaining now. And you're like, I should be pulling all of my spirits and win the game now.
And all of a sudden you hit a bunch of them. Yeah.
So I can see Dream Dance kind of enabling that. That would be a fun win. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
I,
definitely.
I'd love
Um,
that win. But another one that's been really popular has been the Kraken.
yeah. Okay, actually, there is something fun with the Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Cosmic Transmogrifier. Uh, there's only one other eight-costed card or eight-costed troop, I think, and it's Eternal Guardian. So Cosmic Transmogrifier and Kraken work pretty well together. That you put the Kraken out, and then you're always going to be able to transmogrify it either into a Kraken or into an Eternal Guardian. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I played against somebody who was doing that. They had a really cool Cosmic Transmogrifier deck. I wish I remembered who it was, and I'd give them a shout out. But yeah, it was pretty rad. The Cosmic Fire deck they built was actually a pretty stable deck.
That might be a sleeper hit deck right there. To be able to. So was it Sapphire Wild Ramp so that you could ramp up
Yeah,
quickly into the cards?
yeah, it was Sapphire Wild, and it put out a lot of like tokens and stuff with the wild stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There were definitely some kind of cool, weird interactions I hadn't thought of that were doing there too.
Well, that is definitely one for taking a look at.
Oh, and you know what it was too? They had a lot of like artifacts where um, they were good for getting resources, but then
Mm-hmm.
once you already had the resources, you didn't need the artifact the rest of the game, so you could transmogrify it into something that was useful late. That's kind of what they were.
Gotcha. So they would have something like surge mechanism, where
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
like
hey,
mechanism and hex engine, so that like because later on, once you have like 8 resources, you don't really need either of those anymore unless you're really trying to ramp further than that.
yeah, and the 3 cost and the 4 cost slot, as we've talked about before, across the board is just a powerful slot as far as it comes to the playstyle.
Unfortunately, a lot of them are powerful because they have comes into play abilities, and
Mm-hmm.
the transmogrifier doesn't trigger those kinds of abilities. But you can't win all the time.
That is true. You can only win half the time, and then you make sure that you always have the winning half during tournaments. Lose during
Yeah,
testing, win during tournaments. Life lessons from Mokog. Now they did do a couple other things. They have you been able to play the AI very much because they have ramped their decks and they have started patching the AI quite a bit.
I have not played against the new and improved AI yet.
It is worth playing against the new and improved AI. That is
I'll
one
have
of
to
the
give that a
best
shot.
parts. They don't make as many silly mistakes. Like probably the most annoying one that I've seen thus far is they're not playing Blaze Elemental right. They keep wanting to use the power in the second half of their phase, where
Yeah,
you know
it
they
wanted to
just
do
need
that
to do it
before too.
in the first part. But some of the decks are designed where the AI doesn't have to worry about making that kind of play mistake.
Sure.
So the oh goodness, what's his name? We'll pull up his name here. He's the Feather Drifting Downriver. So his deck, as they've revamped it, doesn't have as much of the issues where playing the card in the wrong phase is not beneficial for the deck. It is a straightforward flight beatdown deck, and when that hits, it hits like a brick right to the side of the face. I was going to say some other expletives because I was playing that versus my mill deck, and I was not a happy camper. Uh,
Right.
and because just part of what it is that if you give that deck time to set up, it's going to beat your face in. But just like any deck, so it operates the most like a standard player, in my opinion, right now, is a Feather Drifting Down Rivers deck.
I'll have to
And
try
I'm
that
going to
out.
have to shorten that guy's name. Oh my god, that's a mouthful. Uh,
You can just say downriver, or I don't know. You can come with something.
FDD. FDD's deck. Double
No,
D's
I would
deck.
never.
I'm calling him Double D's deck
No,
because I think
I
he's the
will.
only. Yeah, I think he's the only one that's got 2 D's like that. Yeah, the
I
double.
will not acknowledge that name.
Why did you
Um,
not? Did you not watch Nickelodeon's Ed, and Eddie growing up?
actually, no. I always found that show annoying.
Well,
I just it
so
wasn't
is
amused.
SpongeBob SquarePants, but kids watch it anyway.
Oh, I like SpongeBob. SpongeBob's not so bad. I thought it was SpongeBob. At least it was clever sometimes. Like I
True,
mean, it was
Ed, and Eddie was not
cleverly
very
written.
clever very often.
Yeah.
Its cleverness was extremely rare, covered up by massive layers of sarcasm. All right, so Ed, and Eddie was a
Moving on.
bad show. I'll grant that, but you know what's not a bad show? They also updated the tooltips. Transition forced.
Yes.
But they did actually. They've been updating the tooltips quite a bit too, which has been pretty nice in a couple different places.
So that's really important too, because they are aiming for it to be like a watchable game
Mm-hmm.
that you're playing and maybe people are watching you play. They want that to be a thing. Is that like I have a hard enough time reading the cards on my screen to be able to tell what they do. Like the cards in your hand while you're playing, you can't necessarily read all the text. It's usually pretty small and blurry. Like I can't on your screen right now that I'm looking at, I can't read. I know what all these cards do because I'm familiar with them. But if I was not familiar with any of those cards, I would not know what any of them did because the text is so small. So the tooltips being a little bit more legible is definitely good. But they need to do something to improve on that, because if I'm watching you play and you don't highlight the card that where I'm like, what does that card do? But you don't actually highlight it. I'm not. It's not going to be a very good viewer experience for me.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be an issue. I think as part of like the streaming style, and I'm just running into a game to kind of see what some of the tooltips are. So a lot of the tooltip, so for whenever you're zooming in, they'll have ability tooltips here out to the side. So they don't have a lot of highlights in game. Most of the tooltips they seem that they've added thus far have been in the deck building field.
Yeah.
Which, is not bad. It's just not super preferred all the time. We'll go ahead and drop that guy. So, one of the other things that's going on, and one of the things that's going to have me buckling down here is they're doing an adaptation from the Streamers Tournament, and that has changed up. It's now been taken over by the Hex TCG Procast guys, and they are now doing a Challenge Series tournament.
So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be kind of like they're aiming for it to be kind of like the Star City tournament, where they have a bunch of tournaments and you get points across the tournaments, and then they have a big championship at the end of the highest points, and the higher you rank in each tournament, the more points you get, and kind of fun stuff like that. But in this one, they already have like 150 odd people signed up to play. People want to play the game. That makes me excited. That there's that many people excited to play Hex competitively against each other, even if it's just for fun and everything. But I like that, and
Oh yeah. And did you sign up?
I did. I thought I actually signed up a couple days ago, but then I went to go double check if I was actually on the list, and I realized I hadn't clicked like the extra button you had to click to sign up. I registered on the website, but I didn't register all the way for the tournament, I guess.
Well, I made sure to sign up as well, so if I see you in game, I will hold nothing back function. Nothing! Sorry.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to come up with a deck list, because I haven't had a whole lot of time to play lately, and I need to come up with something new and decent that actually has a chance at winning.
Now, I mentioned this a little earlier, but I so just want my mill deck to work. I just want it to be awesome, and it's not.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about that last episode.
It just hurts so badly.
Tournament stuff. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of work for them to put it together, though. Like, doing Swiss rounds is great. I like that they're doing that. So the pairings throughout all the rounds will make sense. You're paired against people with the same record as you, more or less. But man, it's gonna be tough making sure that everybody plays their games in a 2-day window. Like, there's gonna be so many people that just aren't able to coordinate with somebody else who's on the opposite side of the globe, and their game doesn't get played, and then I don't know how they're going to handle it, but there's going to be some kind of awkward situations, I guess.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be defining the rules as it comes along, because I don't think there's a way that you really can't kind of define some of those, because not all the situations are going to be readily thought of just right off the top of your head. So, like, a couple of things I was like, okay, what's going to happen when this thing occurs, or when this thing occurs? I think it's going to be interesting.
Well, I have a little bit. I should really emphasize that it's a pretty small amount of tournament organizing. But a lot of those things, like if you've organized tournaments, you've already seen there are things that you just do catch you completely off guard, and you can't really be prepared for them. But if you've organized a few tournaments, at least you can be prepared for a majority of the things that are going to crop up. But I mean, that just comes with time, and I think they are looking for people to help organize their tournaments.
Yes.
But yeah, that's definitely something that's time consuming. So I think whoever does that should definitely make sure that they actually have the time to do so.
Uh, Most definitely is probably the shortest answer that I could throw at that one.
Yeah.
The Because the biggest thing it's going to be on that one. So if you imagine right now, they've signed up to wrangle 150 cats, and they've asked some of those cats to stream. And you're like, all right, guys, you have 2 days to get 3 games done, and tell us who won, essentially.
Well,
Uh,
you're gonna see a lot of the people get their games done in the very first, like right away. Boom, they're
mm-hmm.
done. And you know what? Uh, if they had pairings up already, I bet there were people who would just like, boom, the second pairings are up, being able to find their person and play against them. But then there's gonna be people that like 2 days go by and they're like, oh, I didn't realize pairings went up, or all kinds of different things. Um,
Well,
all I guess
and
I would
you know
say,
that's something that they've tried to address. I'll give them that. They've thought of the least
yeah,
that bit. So they have put the onus on getting a hold of your of the person you're paired with onto the two individuals themselves. So ideally, they said, hey, these are the official contact methods. You need to make sure that you try to contact them through here, in addition to other methods of trying to contact them to schedule
oh,
a game.
definitely, yeah.
And so ideally, the reason that you do that is you'd want to contact through the official means first. Make sure you give at least 3 attempts, and not like 3 attempts within 3 minutes, but something understandable. And
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of discretion there. Discretion may be the better part of valor, but it is also the biggest thing that kills efficiency.
You know what
And
I
that's
would
why
say?
they need the organizer.
So the previous, where it was like the streamers tournament, I think it had 40 or so people playing in it. Maybe it was 38. I can't remember off the top of my head. Um, but for that one, they should like everybody was already streaming, so it was kind of automatically recording them play.
Mm-hmm.
If a lot of the people who are playing in this one probably just didn't want to be streaming, or that wasn't a practicality for them. If you have a way of at least recording yourself play, I would recommend
Mm-hmm.
doing so. Not only will it help you improve as a player, but also in case some weird stuff happens while you're playing, you'll have that video to go back to and be like, hey, this is what happened. And you can bring it to like the tournament organizer and say, hey, we at least have this video. How do you want to handle the situation? It'll be helpful for everybody involved.
Yep, most definitely. And whatever you do not counterspell a counterspell, and do not stone skin a counterspell.
Yeah, that happened in one of the games I was playing.
That since apparently that is still a game-ending bug still, which is unfortunate because I so wanted to counter magic in an earlier game. I'm like, but if I do this, it destroys the game and I implode. And it made me very sad. And then I lost, but it was a long, fun game.
Long story short, I would say I really am looking forward to. I mean, this is way down the pipeline, but once they are able to have player-hosted events within the game client, will be pretty awesome.
Now, what seems to be pretty interesting thus far is that it looks like they're getting some Cryptozoic support on this one so far. It looks like they're trying to go, like you said, the Star City Games route. They're wanting to do a little bit of product support as well, and they're hoping Cryptozoic tosses in a little bit. And considering that they've been mentioned on the official webpage thus far, there might be a little bit of an assist there for especially this big and organized event.
Well, what it is that the Hex TG are like Shaggy's best buds with those guys, so they kind of have a hookup already. So.
Hey, I was trying not to incentivize nepotism there. I was trying to dance around it elegantly.
Oh, I was just ready to just address it right off the bat.
But
well, not that that's a bad thing. I mean, it's totally good. Those guys are putting in a lot of work to get this stuff going. It doesn't. These things don't happen on their own. And if anybody else could do it, why aren't other people doing it? They can't, because it takes initiative. You gotta step up to the plate and man up.
Well, and the other thing is, think of how dull some of the Magic stuff would be without Star City Games. They step up to try to do a lot to do similar kind of community building themselves. So, if we can already get a burgeoning form of that, it'll only be the better for the experience. And hey, Vessel, welcome to the cast.
But moving on to our next topic, what is it? We were talking about things we would like to see implemented, and or yeah, pretty much things we'd like to see implemented. When we were talking about adding this to the show notes and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
what I was thinking of kind of like more short term stuff, stuff that could realistically be implemented, um, in the next week or
Mm-hmm.
two. If you had your choice of what was going to be on the next alpha patch notes, what would be something that you would add to it?
Well, the easy cop out answer is more cards, more cards, more cards. But I'm not going to give the cop out answer because, well, I'm not a police officer. What I'd really like to see is I'd like to see a little bit of the enhancements to the social functionality a little bit.
Okay.
The chat and the like going there so that we can start getting that MMO feel a little bit on the PvP side of everything. And the other one I'd like to see is I would like to see a little bit of keep functionality brought in. Uh,
Oh, you're not going to see that anytime in the alpha.
well, and what I mean by that is I'd like to see us testing switching out and personalizing a couple of these banners, the keep in the background, some of this background stuff here. Uh, I'd like to see that just kind of like as a testing to see how the art goes to make sure that those layers and the like work. It's
Oh, so like
aesthetic.
some UI customization stuff is kind of what you're
Yes.
saying.
So do I want to see everyone's keep getting set up in the early parts of PVE? I love that. It's not realistic, but I'd like to see some of the UI testing and stuff that's going on. Are we going to get that? No, because you're going to be able to test that really, really easy in house. So there's no reason
Yeah.
for them to put it up on the open alpha, which
Well,
is
that's going to be very late beta when we see any of that, I think.
so. They're going to kick it out to make sure that there was nothing super, super broken in it by the time that they do release it. But you know what? I just don't like looking at the human knight here. What if I want to see an elf, or maybe if I want to have an orc, charging across out from my keep? I don't know all the possibilities. I'd like to see a few.
Yeah, being able to change him out for like one other picture would be cool. If they just started adding like one at a time that you're able to change it out for, sure, that would be pretty neat.
The let's see, the social stuff I think is probably the biggest, just because we don't have our avatars yet, and they do want that MMO side for the PVE. So a couple little things here and there I think would make for making it feel like an MMO.
Sure. Yeah, having the social stuff would be good in there, and I think it would, you know, maybe help people keep from getting bored a little bit. I'd like to see like being able to drag out your own chat window. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I can have my local game chat and still be in general chat and still chat to you in a separate whisper. That would be kind of nice. Also, that was kind of along the lines of what you were saying. One other one I would like is if you were able to access the. This is something really small, and I think they actually should work on it
Mm-hmm.
pretty soon. Is being able to access the options menu from within actual gameplay, like when you were actually playing and slinging cards.
Yes.
If you want to change the volume or something, you can't do that unless you quit out of the game, which is kind of annoying.
Oh, most definitely. The other is you have to have some of your sound effects really, really low on for some of these, because whenever you have multiple
Yeah.
creatures attack, I know on the stream it just bangs with the sound.
So
Boom.
loud.
I mean,
Yeah, and
you know,
it really catches you off guard.
one not as bad. All of a sudden, I attack with 5 things that get through, and it's just there's battle clash, and then there's eardrum damage. You know.
Yeah, it'll make you jump out of your seat if you're not ready for it. I think one final thing for me at least would be adding sideboards to one versus one play.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe having it set so that you don't always have to play a match. You could just play or you could just play one game, or you could play a best 2 out of 3, at least for one-on-one. That'd be nice if they were able to add that. And I don't think, I mean, they have a lot of the infrastructure for it already because you're able to sideboard and whatnot.
So like
There's some polish that needs to be done on the sideboarding too as well.
So, like, for instance, I brought up the challenge AI. It's not super, super different from, like, the player challenge, because I don't want to take up someone's player challenge and then just kind of, like, back out and deny it. But, for instance, you can just easily add a select your deck and then a select your game format. So it'd be like, select your deck, bam, select your format, oh, standard. Okay, maybe I want. Sorry, I don't know if I'm going to say that word. We're going to back out of that if I'm not willing to play someone right now. Uh,
Best two out. Then yeah, I get
yeah,
what
so
you're going towards.
you know, 2 of 3 sideboard, no sideboard. Uh, have it, have it actually be something up here in the options menu that you do, which it looks like they
Exactly.
added
Yeah.
the champion select there, but to have that in there so that it's like, okay, I want to be able to do this functionality. Oh, I want to do this functionality now. But we can see the planet.
So
Yay!
I think that wraps up. I mean, we already actually talked about our cards of the week earlier. You're talking about all the incantations. Um, so
But
we
I
already
love
kind
the
of crossed that off the list.
incantations. I don't want to
But
cross it off the list. There's more incantations, not just those two. Uh, I could ramble on about those for quite a while.
uh, like, I actually love that for a second. Like, they're not just those two. Like, the other ones have feelings too.
Two.
You're just ignoring them. They can't be cast aside.
No,
And,
they
yeah,
can't.
and spinning the globe.
Yes, but the other incantations, I do want to touch on them a little bit because all of them have been just really fun to play with thus far. So the Sapphire incantation it's the highest costed one so far, but when you bring out the Armada and your opponent's been drawing cards, it's wickedly fun to see executed on like the incantation. And then, oh goodness, where's my fire incantation? The incantation of Fury. You know that is just going to work so well into some of the aggro decks. You know it's going to work great in the burn decks. Uh, to me, the incantations are exciting. Incantation of Fear is Mill's best friend. It gives them a creature for benefiting on the Mill side.
The one of the Fury one works pretty well with Gozog, the champion, where it does 1 damage to your opponent. That's a pretty easy way to get a couple counters onto it.
So,
but I think it's totally awkward though that, like you were saying, the card draw one costs more than one. So, but I guess it kind of needs to, because if it costs 1, they would have to up the number of counters it needed.
yes.
So then if you drew it late, it would be that much worse. So yeah, I guess it is better that it costs more. So it's still fair. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if 4 is really its cost to be aggressive. So the reason that they were able to bring out the incantation on me when they did was because I was just in a rut. They were going to win anyway. But if it had a cost of 3, if you could drop this on turn 3 so that by turn 8 you have an incantation out, within that time frame you have a really good push and pull of the game. You won't necessarily have stacked up so many cards to make the Armada unbeatable.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at it, I think it is kind of still fair if it costs 5, or not cost 5. Sorry, cost 1. Like, you're still not gonna get it likely until turn, what is it, like turn 6 is when it's form for you, and then if you have some effects it'll transform earlier. So I mean, it could transform pretty early if you had effects.
I think if 1 is way too aggressive in my opinion because of the cards that do allow you to draw thus far, having the Armada out turn 4 or turn 5 is really, really, really powerful. And the reason for that is because you have enough cards in your hand to make the bonuses to the Armada significant. Now, but when you look at the turn 4 drop, so you drop it on turn 4, you may only have 3 to 4 cards in hand, and you've got to make sure that you get through to the counters. And unless you happen to just be sitting on oh goodness, I can't remember its name,
Okay,
but to Oracle Song, then that's a different setup.
Let me elaborate a little bit. So like the other ones, like the one of Fury, or the Savage, whatever the wild one is, if you're able to activate it early, which is not totally impossible, you can actually activate it. I think people are saying on turn 3 is the earliest it can pop out. It's extremely powerful. Well, like the Lightning Armada, the earliest you can do it with it costing 4. I mean, sure, you could play it and then pop it out on turn 4 if you have some real shenanigan combo kind of thing. And even turn 5 is probably pretty unrealistic that you're going to draw 5 cards on turn 5.
Well,
but like
it's
the
for every
earliest you can
card
do it,
that's drawn. So turn 5 is doable if you can draw 4
it's
additional
every card
cards. Yeah, it's for every card that you draw, I believe. Or is it every card that's
yeah,
drawn?
it's every card you can do, but I mean, like, you're not going to draw 4 extra cards on turn 5. Well, you might, but I mean, it's pretty, making that happen is a pretty big hoop to jump through.
Yes.
Like, if
So
if you're
it's
able to do that,
it's the start of your turn card is 1, Oracle Song for 2 more, and then Oracle Song for 2 more with somehow producing a free mana. It looks like they want these to roughly take 2 to 3 turns to proc, but when you
Yeah.
have ones like Incantation of Righteousness and Incantation of Savagery that are doable to proc on turn 3 on its early side, and turn 2, turn 3, they're really consistent on procking. When you compare those to how quickly it takes to do an incantation, it's just a really different story. I mean, I think the only way you might be able to do incantation turn 5 is maybe, drop incantation turn 4, turn 5, draw a card, and then play 4 Ancestors Chosen's Ghosts, Ancestral Specters. Have those chain into each other.
Yeah,
Then
okay,
you'll
so-
guarantee that that one goes.
Yeah, what I'm getting at though is that like the other ones, they all require you to jump through hoops,
Mm-hmm.
but some of them come into play at a very early turn in the game and are
Yes.
very powerful, or this one comes into a very late part of the game and its power level at that point is kind of arguable because that late in the game it might just not matter. Like, my problem is, like, if you're gonna have to jump through hoops, why not let players live the dream and do it a turn or 2 earlier? Like, why not let this one cost 2 or 3, which might not seem like a big difference, but it actually kind of is. I
think-
just don't like that it costs 4.
Yeah, I think 3 is probably the sweet spot for that card. 2, I think, might be a smidge too aggressive, just from my feelings of how balancing goes. Because, like, the 2 drop for Incantation of Fear seems fantastic, because it, sometimes you'll get it to proc the next turn. Most of the time, it's going to take 2 to 3 turns to proc, and it's a 2 drop. But if I had the same thing happen with the Incantation of Ascension, the power level of the Armada is much greater than the Madness card that comes from Incantation of Fear. So I can see why that would increase the cost by at least 1. I just can't justify that
Yeah.
4 cost yet. But then again,
And-
I could
and,
just be missing something, and someone might have already broken it. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we're kind of both saying the same thing more or less, but yeah, the blood one, definitely, like the Maddening Nightmare. It's a 6/4, and it lets you potentially mill one of the cards off the top of the deck if you feel like it. It does give you a little bit of information, so you don't have to. If you don't want, you can leave the card there if it's a bad card, which is definitely good, but its power level, I would say, is probably the lowest out of all of them almost.
I love it in my mill deck.
Yeah.
The lowest of all of them,
Well, like, even in
I'd
your
put
mill
it.
deck-
I'd put it next to lowest over Incantation because of Incantation's cost. So,
well,
'cause you could
incantation, they're all incantations, which you're
oh,
talking the
Ascension,
blue one.
yeah, the blue Sapphire's Ascendance, and it's just because I know turn 3 I can consistently pull out I can successfully resolve Incantation of Fear.
Oh no, I wasn't even talking about which incantation is the most powerful. Yeah, the blue one is obviously not it's obviously the worst, but I was talking like the card that it transforms into. If you just had that, which one would be the weakest? And I think the blood one's the weakest.
Well, so the blood one is the 2 cost, a 2 for 6/4 that essentially scry then with a possible mill on your opponent. It is really nice compared to But if you compare that to a 1 for 6/6 spell shield, or a 1 for 4/4 +2 to every other creature, and then a 1 for 6/3 speed, that's really harsh competition.
Yeah, exactly. It's really harsh competition, and in this case, like, sure, I know you really like Mill, but its effect, it doesn't affect the board state, and it's not that scary. Like, it's still a 6/4, but it's basically just, it might as well just be a vanilla 6/4.
At this point,
for
yes.
all intents and purposes, yeah. The other guys all kind of do something. When the speed one catches you off guard, it gets an extra swing. The other guy buffs your team. The other guy is hard to deal with, and then the other one has evasion and kind of can potentially be pretty big.
So what I'm seeing just a little bit on the combos is that the incantations within their monochromatic realms are probably all fairly balanced to each other. I think where we're going to start getting some of the more intricate aspects of them is going to be in the dual decks, and maybe even in the 3-color decks for the incantations. Yeah. So for instance, Incantation of Fear is really good when you can bring in this 6/4 on turn 3, but you need Chronic Madness to do that, to really accelerate that. So, you know, and that's a couple hoops to jump, but for some reason the mill decks can do it about probably 1 in 4 games with some good mulligan choices. Which is really nice for them to have a, right? You know, that's really good for a generally creatureless mill deck to have a big fatty to sit there and block and attack and put on different types of aggression. But you needed the blue, you needed Sapphire to do that. Channel incantation.
Food spec.
The incantation of Savagery and the incantation of Righteousness are going hand in hand too. So I need to check and make sure I did not lose my butt of Function here. Are you still here, Function?
Oh, yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, I was just going to say I need to... I'm still I'm still under the weather a little bit, so probably should wrap up kind of soon.
Okay, we'll wrap up our tangents here. So when I read the incantations, I thought these can compete with some of the I wanted to make a point, then all of a sudden they leave me. Incantations, incantations compete with escalation cards for spell slots now. Well, they may not always win, but they compete for them at least.
I don't know if I would say that. Are they competing? You're saying like you're playing one or the other? A lot of them pair well with the escalation cards, and not all decks want either the escalation cards or the incantations. Most of the decks that want them are friends with each other. So well, I don't know if compete is the right word, but yeah.
Well, yeah,
they're power level wise, they're pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say the reason why I use the term compete on there is because there's going to be, it's another choice for the spots in the slots in your deck. And to me, that's competing for some space. They are working great with each other now, but there's more cool stuff to come still. And I like that.
I will disagree on this one. I don't think they're competing.
Well, you can disagree with me all you want. If we believed the same things all the time, this would be a very, very boring show.
It would.
But Function is right. I need to let him rest up so that he's good for the next time we do this. If anyone would like us to go over maybe some deck ideas or maybe do some breakdowns, don't hesitate to send a deck to either Function or myself. If you would like any specific topics, don't hesitate to shoot us a message on Twitch or either one of our YouTube channels, on the official forums. And if you happen to be our opponents during the tournament that's coming up, you can get a hold of us. It is not that hard. We both listen to Twitter.